Bare necessity, but simple bare necessity. Bare necessity, but simple bare necessity.
Hey there, it's Rebear and welcome to another Troop Talk. Today I've got this cute little Rock City cup from a vacation trip. And inside it I have tea from a different vacation trip to a completely different place. It is a fireside spice tea from the Tea and Spice Exchange. So we'll see how that goes. But today's Troop Talk is continuing last week's discussion on my Christian reading life and why I read books that are non-Christian books and read books that maybe have characters that completely are the opposite or go against things that I believe are right. Basically, books that support things that I may disagree with or promote things that I may think are sin or whatever. Why I read books outside of my belief system. Well, today we're going to find out some of those reasons. Now, of course, this is not a definitive list by any means. I'm assuming that I will think of other reasons at some point. So all of the list that I have for you today, it's not a me saying, oh, I pick up books specifically so I can expand my ministry or be a better Christian. Like like fiction books or, non-Christian fiction. Like, I'm not picking up any of these books saying like, oh yeah, this is going to be the perfect book to teach me how to be the best Christian ever. I'm going to be so understanding and so empathetic. Like, no. That's not the point of this video. I think it could come off that way if I don't put this clip in at the beginning. Thought processes are shaped by the media that we consume. Some for the better and some for the worse. And depending upon the things that are listed in this video, I may or may not be able to use things that I'm reading to help me shape my thought processes for the better. In the fact that I'm not in this bubble of only seeing things a certain way or only understanding seeing things a certain way. Let me put it that way. I don't just understand my perspective. I can understand other people's perspective. And that's so important in your ability to actually communicate with people that are different from you. In general, not just as a Christian, as a person with only my own experiences to feed off of, to be able to then reach into other people's bits of other people's experiences and kind of pick apart other people's types of brains and like start to understand more types of experiences and more types of emotions and become a more open-minded, less narrowed perspective person. Because if you only go off of your own experiences, then you come up with these formulas for life. Like, if you do this or if this happens to you, then you should do this, so then this happens. And if you close yourself off to other views and other perspectives and trying to understand other people and appreciating their art and appreciating their being, their existence, then you're not gonna get very far in your ministry. Number one is that it is something that I at the end of the day, if you're reading something and it is not something that is blatantly said, don't consume this kind of thing, or don't read this kind of thing, or watch that, you know what I mean? If that's not blatantly said or clearly understood from what is said in the Bible, or I don't feel conviction by the Spirit, I feel like it's generally those are the two sources from which I make my decisions. The Word itself and the Spirit within me telling me when I screw up, which He's great at. So, if neither of those two things are happening, then there you go. But that's not a definitive, ruling. There are other scenarios that do come into play with that, and that is important to note that, as a leader, it's very important for me to address certain things that are okay, this is a prominent part of this book. Do not read this if it's a temptation for you. And I don't blatantly say if it's a temptation for you, but I make sure to take note of, if it's a romance book, I'm going to mention if it's steamy or if it's schmexy, and if that's a temptation for you, maybe skip this one. If you have issues with lustful attitude or lustful thoughts or tempting attitudes in that department, maybe don't read this one. I'm going to be clear about the things that are in the books that I read. Now, in certain capacities, that is going to play into what I choose to bring into my life in some ways. If a book is really preaching something that I don't agree with, then it's probably going to end up not a part of my life anyway. Typically speaking, I probably won't pick it up. But if I do pick it up and I didn't know that prior to, then it's probably going to end up no longer being on my shelves as it is. And honestly, with a lot of things, you're not going to know if it's something that is okay or not until you're reading it and until you do read it. And as a person who isn't easily tempted by the books that I read, they don't lead me to a temptation in a specific area. From my years of reading, I've never had that be a huge challenge in my life. I feel like it depends on your temptations and the habits and attitudes that you struggle with. So I want to put that completely out there, that it depends on your position in your church and in your ministry, as well as what it is that you're dealing with in particular. But it depends on how you're going into that content, what intentions you have when you're reading it or experiencing it. Are you looking for the satisfaction that you're kind of getting to satisfy that urge or temptation without actually doing it? Doing the thing that you're tempted by? Because if that's the problem, then yikes. That is not the point. But if it's an opportunity for you to expand your perspective and understand other people in a way that helps you to minister better, by all means. Or if it's something where it's not a prominent part of the story, or there's other elements of the story and that's the reason you're reading it and you're not really focused on that part and you're not really paying as much attention to that part that is not aligned with your beliefs, then that's okay too. I hope that makes sense. I'm trying to say this without actually specifically giving an example, other than we will be using misery again. It's an easy example to talk about murder. I don't get the satisfaction of her slaughtering a person in a very disturbing manner. I don't get satisfaction out of that. It's disturbing. It's not satisfying. And for that reason, I feel perfectly okay with reading this, and it doesn't tempt me to kill people. Nor does it tempt me to kidnap people or force them to write a book. I'm not tempted by anything in this at all. So it's okay. Like, it doesn't give me the satisfaction of, oh, if I could do that. Like, no. No, I don't want to. I'm not interested. Okay, moving on to number 2. Understanding people who are different from me. Obviously, you can learn a lot from reading a book that someone has written, celebrating certain things, or honoring certain things, or like focused on certain things like drug addiction. If the author has a lot of experience with it, they're coming from this place where they have a lot of perspective that you don't have if it's not something that you have dealt with. And in ministry, it's very important to learn how to be more empathetic towards people who are different from you. Oh, yes. Hallelujah, Lord. Absolutely. 100% yes. This is delicious. I'm obsessed. I want it forever. I'm gonna have to find their website and continue to buy this tea once I run out of it, because it's really good. 3. Sometimes you encounter questions that you don't have, like, you know your answer, like, this is wrong, or this is right, or this is the truth, but you don't know how to explain the why. And that's important. Being able to respond to the why question is so incredibly important. If you can't give a why behind the what, then you will not get the who to follow through with the Jesus. I ran out of rhymes. But seriously though, if you can't put the why with the what, then you can't get the who. So you're not going to be able to bring people closer to understanding their the faith and your faith and Christ in general if you cannot answer questions. And so it brings up opportunities for you to further your response repertoire, meaning your opportunity to say, okay, well, if this is the question that this character has, and you know, I need to be able to answer that and give a why behind the answer, then it's gonna, you know, keep your wheels turning and keep you actively dealing with things. Because, like, I mean, not always sitting, I'm not always sitting there and like thinking about my ministry every second of my reading experience. Sometimes reading is just for fun, but there are ministry opportunities that sometimes sneak up on you while you're reading just for fun. If you expand your horizons, then there are opportunities for other types of development within that experience of reading a book. If you take the time to just like think for a little bit, you can make every reading experience a development of your faith. If you just take a little bit of time to like think about the characters, think about how you would deal with that situation if someone were to come to you talking about that, which is so important to be able to do in ministry, like as a person who is like in front of people. They feel like they can come to you because they're like, oh, this person knows things. So then you need to actually know things to be able to do things. So it validates what you're doing with your time. Yes, you're allowed to do things just for fun, but it should never become an idol. It calls into question things that I need to seek answers for or study. Every once in a while I realize that there's something I've never pondered and taken the time to figure out. And when I encounter certain things in books, sometimes I'm like, wait a minute. wait a minute, why is that? Or wait a minute, how would I deal with that? You know, like, it calls things into question that I'm able to then do my research for and get an answer. My hair is now messed up because I itched at it. Don't scratch the itch. Pat the itch, Brie. Have you learned nothing? No, it's just gonna be wrong. Okay, hang on. What was the intention behind the rule that was given in the Old Testament especially? What was the intention behind it, and was it like a rule for the time or the rule for forever? Because some things are specific to a situation like that. And so if you don't do your research finding out why it was written, who it was written by, and more information about that person sometimes, then you're not learning very much, and you're not expanding your understanding of God's true will for you and for now. Spicy goodness. Some things are not temptations for certain people. Some people don't have lustful thoughts. They just don't. They just don't. They don't care about schmexy stuff. They're not interested. Some people are actually like by it, so that's obviously not a temptation for that person. Lustful thoughts are not a temptation for the person who's grossed out by them or by that. So in that case, that person can read all the smutty romance they want, and it's not going to tempt them to become a sexaholic. On the other hand, if a person does have a temptation that they have struggled with in the past and they are working to overcome it, one of the things they need to learn when they become stronger in that resolve against that temptation, they need to learn to be able to be present with that temptation and not fall into it. And I say they, and I mean me too. I need to be able to have that temptation present in my life without falling into it. And the reason I say that is because you need to be able to minister to people who are struggling with something that you previously struggled with without becoming that thing again. An alcoholic and a recovered alcoholic are going to work close together when that recovered alcoholic is trying to encourage that non-alcoholic or that current alcoholic to start their path of recovery, right? The same thing is true for any kind of struggle or temptation or, whatever. The same thing is true. So if you can't read a book that incorporates that and stand strong in your resolve, then you're not ready for any other kind of temptation incorporation, or you're not ready to go out and minister to other people who are currently struggling with that situation if it's still a challenge for you, because guess what's going to happen? As you continue to talk about it, you're going to want to fall back into it more likely. And so if you can't read about it, that means you're not ready to talk about it, if that makes sense. So in some situations, it can actually be used to counteract your temptations. Again, don't be tricked by thinking that it's counteracting, but it's actually just scratching your itch. That, especially with lustful thoughts, is a very easy trap I think could be fallen into, is thinking that, oh, I'm conquering my lustful thoughts, but in reality, you're just having them over a fictional character. That's not fixing the problem. You know what I mean? So be aware, I would say, of if it's actually, you know, helping or not, I guess. But yeah, so I wanted to talk about this topic because I feel like it's a question that other Christians would have for me, like why I read horror books, or why I read romance that might have a few steamy scenes in it. And I'm not reading erotica. And when I read horror, most of the time it's not that, like, it's more psychological type stuff that I'm into. It's not like anything super like gross. But like a lot of people don't understand, and I get that. I totally get that. And some people would even think that it is like that it changes my thought process, or it manipulates the way I believe or think. And that's not the truth. If I were being manipulated by those things, or if my thought process was being changed, if my beliefs were being changed by what I'm consuming, then I would hope and pray that it's changing my beliefs for the better of the kingdom of God. Meaning that it's not changing my beliefs to be, like, oh, this is not a sin. This couldn't be a sin. This has to be okay. No, that's not what I mean. I mean that it's changing my beliefs from religious to relationship. It makes me understand the world better and people better. And if I can understand the world and people better, then I can be more capable of, you know, while staying in my own lane, communicating with people who are not in my lane. Does that make sense? Okay, so that is it for today's troop talk. I hope that you enjoyed hearing a little bit more perspective from me about Christian bookish life and some of the things that I think about as far as, you know, the fact that I can read a sci-fi book or a fantasy book, and that doesn't mean I believe in magic. Books are good, and books are fun, and it's not supposed to be that deep. But sometimes you need to think about things a little bit more deeply, about the why behind what you do, and if it really is fueling or becoming an idol for what you're doing. I am done rambling today. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you have a great rest of your day or night, whatever time it is for you. Make sure you hit the subscribe button so you can join the Bear Scouts, and the notification bell down below so that you'll be notified every time I post a new video. But most importantly, so that I can see you again very soon. Peace out, Bear Scouts.
About your worries and your stress. I mean it, bare necessities. That's why a bear can rest at ease with just the bare necessities of life. Yeah, with just the bare necessities of life.